Today's podcast is brought to you by Progresso Talent Partners, who for more than 25 years have successfully delivered interim and permanent leadership talent to transform businesses. To hire the talent you need to enable your business to thrive, visit www.progressotalent.com today. Hey listeners, welcome to Extrology. I'm Lee Cooper, and today I'm joined by Christoph Lippuner, co-founder and CEO of Semble, the platform helping clinicians deliver fast, safe, and connected healthcare. Semble was born from a very personal experience in Christoph's family and from the realization that healthcare professionals often have systems working against them rather than for them. In this conversation, we talk about building from crisis, making trust the real product in healthcare, and how a founder learns to become a CEO without losing the mission. So what's the story behind the story? Without further ado, let's get into it. Christoph Lippuner, welcome to Extrology. And I want to start today with your first company being born out of creativity and Semble born out of something very different. What is the earliest memory you have of the moment your personal life collided with your sense of purpose?
Oh, wow. Thanks for having me, Lee. It's great to be here. Wasn't expecting such deep questions early on. My sense of purpose, I probably had it in me throughout my entire life. When I think about my parents, I get my moral compass from my parents. And I think early on, they taught me the importance of doing things that matter, living your life to its fullest and enjoying the moments. The element of gratitude is something that's very, to me, to some extent, is related to purpose as well. Because for you to have this, at least in my view, for you to be able to feel purpose, there needs to be an element of gratitude, of somehow belonging to the life we live in. And so I couldn't pinpoint to one particular moment, but I've always tried to live my life in a way or make choices, and they weren't always the right choices, but make the choices that I feel make sense for me.
I think that's interesting because they make sense in the moment, right? To your point that they may not have always have been what you refer to, I think, as the right choices. But I think that's true of everybody, right? We all have moments in life, and that's part of the learning. Nobody ever makes the perfect choice every time, other than I would argue it's the right choice for them in that moment. And then you learn as a consequence, or don't, whatever the outcome might be.
Yeah, no, you're right. 100%. So I just, I guess what I'm trying, and I guess probably the case for many people as well, is not necessarily going for the easy choice, I'd say, but more for the choice that I feel respect my views and values.
And you mentioned the role of your parents in that shaping you. I think that's a familiar story to many, I'm sure. But growing up, large family, brothers, sisters, you've siblings. What was childhood like for you?
Yeah, so I grew up in Geneva, in Switzerland, and that's where I live now after 20 years and plus in exile. And I have a sister who's got kids now. So grew up with my parents, my sister, and a very loving family, very close family. I think when I think back, and it's interesting because I do recreate some of that today. I have a wife and 3 daughters. And it's recreating that really strong nucleus around the family. It's almost like a clan to some extent, right? I mean, we kind of family is enough in a way, which has its good and its not so good sides of it. But yeah, very, very, very close family and just, very, I'd say, normal upbringing in Geneva. With a working dad. My mom was looking after us, so we were really lucky to have a mom that was at home and taking care of us. And growing up, when I think about Geneva, I think a lot of my views and values were shaped by that city as well, because it's a small city, but it's very international. And so early on, a lot of my friends had very international backgrounds. And I think when I look at today, Semble, and we'll get to it, we're a very diverse team. And I think in a way, I had a speech last Christmas, a Christmas party in 24, and I basically made a parallel between the Semble team and my early days as a skateboarder, and my crew, my gang of skateboarders were very diverse, and I was wearing Vans with a tuxedo, and I got a lot of trouble for it. You should have worn nice shoes, and they finally understood why I was wearing Vans. But I think I try to recreate that feeling of diversity and having in a way, a very diverse gang today at Semble as well.
And what is it about that? Is it a diversity of thought and of experience and of cultures and of backgrounds that brings an eclectic mix from which great things can happen? What does that diversity mean to you?
It is having that diversity of thought and viewpoints, and not having this kind of very dogmatic approach to life or to things. And I think when I think about myself, it created a sense of belonging to me. I have a tougher time to belong into a place where there's a very dogmatic view, and it gave me that sense of belonging as well.
And you mentioned when we were just chatting before we came on mic here that banking was the original kind of, I say the dream. Maybe it was the dream. I don't want to put words into your mouth, but as a child then growing up, you're thinking this is the career choice for me, which obviously is very different to where you find yourself today. And we'll come on to that. But why banking? What was the appeal?
So my dad was a banker, and he was a commodity trader before, but he then went into banking, and I was very much looking up to my dad and what he was doing. Growing up in Geneva, the banking industry is obviously a pretty big industry. So if you're looking for an international career and you want exposure to interesting projects and you enjoy numbers and people relationship, it kind of fitted a lot of things that I enjoyed. I also think beyond those things, the image that it portrayed, right, was this. And I mean, I grew up, I watched Wall Street. When 87, I was 10 years old, but later, and had a big impact on me as well. And you have this almost romantic idea about the banker on Wall Street, right? And it's beyond the job in itself, is like, this is who I want to be, right? And interestingly, we talked about it before. I think if I had to do that again, I probably would have picked a different career. But I didn't even think about it, right? It might have been architecture, something more on the artistic side that blends art and numbers as well. But yes, so to me, that's kind of who I wanted to be, and we talked about visualization. I kind of wanted to be an investment banker. I saw myself as an investment banker, not really knowing what they were doing. I mean, reading books about it, and eventually got a job in London. And then when I was in London, I was like, yeah, but my dream is to be a banker in New York on Wall Street. And so again, the power of visualization, I would go to bed and close my eyes and think about, like, one day I'll be walking the streets of New York and be a banker there. And I made it happen, and I eventually got there. And I think it taught me that power of, if you really want something and you obviously put everything into it, and you see yourself there, you can make it happen. And I think that as taking that into me being an entrepreneur and in a leadership position, I use that same power of visualization of where I want to take the company and where we will be. I see it's powerful, but for me, it's powerful only if that connection between how I think about it and how deeply in my gut I think it's possible. There has to be a link. I mean, it has to be authentic for me to believe in it.
It was interesting you mentioned architecture there. I'd read that you'd spoken about always having the urge to create, and then facing something deeply personal with your mother's illness, at a time at which, as I understand it, investors were questioning your why, your motives may be too strong a word, but what was driving you? When you look back now, what actually changed inside you through that period? And what did it teach you about yourself as a founder?
Yeah, so I think first of all, to start a business, to found a business, is a deeply irrational act. The odds are stacked against you. But I think in my case, there was a situation. So I had founded a company before with my co-founder that we had sold to Just Eat, and so we were starting to work on Semble, and I see it as a combination of things. When I look back and I think about the creation of Semble, I realized that the situation of my mom, who got diagnosed with cancer, and she's thankfully fine today, and my obsession about understanding what went wrong and how we got into to that place, and a similar situation for my co-founder, I realized that this wasn't the only thing that got me to start Semble. It created a purpose, but I think that need, that fire, that urge to create something is almost unrelated to that. And that's also what got me to build the previous company. And it's that need to create. I'm not a founder that just sees a problem and wants to fix it. That's not who I am. I'm a founder who has that urge to build something, to create something. And there is this convergence of that need that comes from inside and what I witnessed, and that obsession to have an impact following that deeply personal situation. And that's what created Semble for me.
And was there a moment where you talked of visualization, that perhaps almost the concept of Semble became a compelling vision? There was a circumstance, an event where you thought, this is a problem I need to fix. I mean, accepting your premise that you didn't sit there thinking, I want to fix all these problems, but actually, what was there a point at which you thought, there's a problem here and I can see a solution?
So neither my co-founder or I have any background in healthcare. So we didn't know anything about healthcare. I barely knew my GP. But so what we said, what we did, and I think that's probably the second lesson that I learned is immersion. The need to immerse yourself into the life of the ones that you're planning to serve, right? You kind of there's a saying by Gandhi that says to find yourself, you have to lose yourself in the service to others. And I think it's kind of like you have to basically let go of all your, I know this, I know that, and be very vulnerable and go and learn and insource a lot of knowledge from, in that case, healthcare professionals. And back in 2018, they were very open about this. They saw two guys coming, knocking at their door, caring about, listening to them, caring about their challenges that they had with their system. So they were very welcoming because no one really cared about them, right? They were using antiquated system. And so I think the aha moment was really when we saw the system that they were using and how they were talking about what great looks like for them. And, seeing that excitement in their eyes of like, this is what I want, almost like putting a wish list together, a Christmas list or whatever. And I think that was quite powerful as a moment. And we started to visualize, wait a moment, okay, so this is how it could look like, and this is how we're going to think about it, and not focusing on functionalities but outcomes. We're going to build something. So Semble is a healthcare platform that automates a lot of the admin work for healthcare professionals and connects them to their ecosystem. So we thought we could bring a outsider view into their problem, and rather thinking in terms of they should do this, that, and that, say, okay, this is the outcomes we are going to create for them, and bring in flexibility. And that was powerful.
In the early days of Semble, given you referenced your mother's illness, was there a moment where protecting yourself and serving the mission felt in real conflict? And how did you work through that tension?
So it was I think it nourished me a lot, and I can say the same about my co-founder with his story. So it was a real strength. I think where I was struggling to And as I said, it's a convergence of that with my desire to create, but where I was struggling to tell the story. And at the time it was just me, my co-founder and I. So it was easy. We knew each other's stories and that was fine. But then when you start hiring people, and especially when you start raising funds, it was very difficult, because back in 2018, raising money for health tech was really hard. It's always hard, right? But it was hard because funds didn't necessarily understand healthcare, or, there's this preconceived notion of it's complex and people don't want to buy anything, and doctors don't want to buy new solutions. And so it was really hard. And it was really hard to convince investors because they wanted a reason. Why do we do this, right? And why two guys who don't come from a healthcare background are building this company? And I couldn't say why. I couldn't tell. It was too close to home. I remember sitting in an investor meeting, and there was this partner, and she was grilling me, and she was like, okay, but why did you build this company? And I couldn't, because I knew that if I would kind of break down in the investor meeting, raising funds and talking about my mom's situation. So that fire was in me, but I just couldn't, I couldn't talk about it.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because we might, as I reflect, externally be led to believe, but that having a truly compelling, arguably what more a compelling mission than, or reason, purpose for doing what you're doing than, seeing a difficult, incredibly difficult personal circumstance to come out the other side. But that as a reason, if investors are looking at a reason why you're doing something, why do you think that is? Is it that they perceive a risk as respectfully, but that there's almost too much emotion in it, and therefore if you show that side, they see that as a risk in itself, that there isn't that clarity that's driving you, but actually is a lot of emotion that's driving you? Because I might assume that they would want that drive and that energy that imparts could, when the going gets tough, what bigger drive might there be? It's an interesting conflict as to the investor rationale behind that lack of sense of what the market opportunity might be.
Yeah, I can only speak for our. Look, I think that probably back in the days, and we decided to launch in the private sector in the UK, right? Because we wanted to build a business that stands on its 2 feet before considering the NHS. I think at the time, I know that there were some companies that went into the NHS, and it was very difficult for them. And I think that probably investors saw that, and they were like, they put everything in the same bucket. And probably also considering the private sector, what is that? Is that, it's dramatically changed post-COVID, obviously. But I think in our case, maybe, if I had told the story early on and even cried, we would have probably raised more money. I don't know, because they were like, hey, this guy is really, or maybe they would say like he's an emotional wreck. But yeah, it's just... It's interesting. Fast forward to today, it's a different story. In health tech, there's quite a lot of money that is put into health tech, and we talk about inefficient systems and what AI is doing, and some of these solutions like medical scribes. Listening. It's the conversation is everywhere, right? The ecosystem is growing, and I think that's fantastic. Very pleased to be part of a growing ecosystem.
And the thing that strikes me is trust is not a feature in healthcare; it's the entire product.
Yeah.
If you like, when did you first realize that Semble would not necessarily succeed because of technology, but because of that trust?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, trust is everything, and I think we did talk about this before. It is health tech, but it's healthcare. It's technology in healthcare, and what is not technology today. And at the end of the day, being able to have a chance, whatever the industry as a startup, when you come and you want to sell your product, I think it's a lot about trust and that first prospective customer trusting you. And I put it on 3 things. It's authenticity. Are you authentic in what you're doing? And obviously, talking about healthcare, it's a different level, because we're storing medical data for I mean, today, millions of patients, but there we would come and say, look, you're going to use our system to see patients and we're going to store data for your patients. So yes, trust is a big thing, but it's about authenticity. It's about transparency, and it's about involvement as well. And so early on, getting them involved into our journey and getting to see what we're building and being honest about what we're doing. And I think that built great trust. And we still keep those key values when we engage today with healthcare professionals, and we have doctors in the team, and we have a great product team with lots of talent, but we still engage on a very regular basis with healthcare professionals to understand, bounce off ideas, show them this is about them. And I think that has enabled us to gain their trust because they see that we do care about them. This is about them. Our name is Semble. It's coming from assemble. So it's about assembling healthcare professionals around the patient. So we're in the background. It's all about them. And I think that authenticity has come through. But when I think about the first customer who used our first version, I'm still scared about how this... It wasn't the right solution, right? And they took a big leap of faith, because it's a product that my co-founder and I had built, and that's it. And overnight, they switched over to our system, storing their data in there. And yeah, we owe these early believers a lot.
But I think you built, as I understand it, that point around trust and authenticity, you spent months with clinicians to understand their world.
Yeah.
What did you hear or witness that changed how you thought about building products forever?
I think what I realized is that what you have to differentiate is a lot of people, when you ask them what they want, they tell you how they want it. But what you have to translate into what ultimately do they want. Because the how is what we're good at. Yeah, I think that's probably in terms of, and in the early days with my co-founder, we probably initially worked on the how, almost like literally translating kind of what they wanted. But when someone tells you how they want it, what they're telling you is like, this is the type of outcome I want. And so the journey can be very different. And when you want to build a scalable product that is not only can be used in the UK, but also with the same code base in France, which is our case, which is pretty unique in the health tech world, you have to always agonize over the outcomes rather than the pathways. We have over 80 specialties that are using our solution. It's one solution. Again, so you have to find ways for all those different 80 types of specialties to find a way that works for them.
For someone who's never seen Semble, can you describe a before and after moment for a clinician or a clinic? What did their working day look like before you arrived? And what does it look like now?
Yes, so before we arrived, I'd say healthcare professionals would spend up to 50% of their time on the system. So that means that for 8 hours of seeing a patient, they spend 8 hours on their system, which is crazy. And this is what we agonize over to continuously reduce. And it's even simple things like you wouldn't believe the system that we would see. They had many functionalities, right? I mean, they were doing a lot of things, but you had to open 15 different windows to finally see that this patient had allergy to penicillin, which is crazy, right? I mean, it's very hard to have a clear overview over a patient. It's a very unintegrated solution. And then on top of that, it works in silo, right? So if, for instance, you will be using, online booking, or you'd be using an accounting system or an invoicing system, or you'd draw bloods and need to see the results, all of that would be in different systems. And you end up just spending your time flicking through different systems, trying to find information about the patient, clicking. Up to 70% of healthcare professionals have shown symptoms of burnout, which is crazy, right? You don't want your doctors and their staff to have symptoms of burnout, because what is the result of that is that there's lots of studies that have been done where they show that when you have a symptom of burnout as a clinician, you're over than twice as likely to make medical errors. So we don't want that. But I think it's interesting, just going back to not being a healthcare professional and understanding healthcare professional, is there's a lot of empathy that you build. Because initially you come into this and you have your story. Obviously, you want to help healthcare professionals, and you're building a solution that you think is going to drive also efficiency so they can see more patients and all that. And as you go through the journey, understand also what it really is. I mean, I will never know exactly because I'm not a doctor, but you get closer and closer to understand what it is to be a doctor. And some doctors, they just can't see more patients. This isn't about seeing more patients. They go like, I love your system, but stop talking about I can increase patients. Like, I want to spend time with my wife and kids. I want to feel better about my job. And these things are fascinating because you kind of discover the true side of a whole industry.
You mentioned that a clinician who said Semble allowed her to finally see her children. How did it feel to hear that your product had changed someone's life outside work?
Yeah, I think it's, these are the stories that have such an impact on everyone in the team, right? I think we're over 130 in the team, and everyone feels the mission and the importance of what we're doing. And those kind of testimonials, not only efficiency related, I've cut down my admin time, I could see more patients, because some want to see more patients, but the personal journeys of some of these healthcare professionals, they're so powerful. And so, yes, we love stories like that.
Mm. So when did you first realize that Semble was no longer yours, but that perhaps it had become something that was larger than you?
I'd say that's very closely linked to the founder to CEO journey in my case. And I think early on as a founder, I define myself and I guess my co-founder as product founders, because we really, that's what we were doing, agonizing over the product. And it's an extension of yourself, right? And then you start hiring people, you start implementing processes, you raise money. And at some point, you realize that the product is the company. Mm. And this is now what I should be looking after. And you extract yourself more and more because it's a painful process. But leadership, in my case, my definition of leadership is creating the space for the people. And creating the space is letting go certain things. And I think there's moments where I felt almost like a guest in my own company. And it's beautiful in a way, because it's beautiful to see people really taking ownership. Ownership is a big thing that I talk about in the company. It's not about holding, but it's about like being in the moment and being and actually caring. But it's a beautiful thing, but it's also, in a way, it hurts, right? Because you realize, wait a minute, you have someone that talks about the product vision in way better words, better ways than you would ever do it. And that's why you hire those people, right? But that doesn't mean that you're not also, there's a little bit of almost a grief as a founder.
What have you, that's fascinating. I think if I reflect on my own experience of working with founders over 30 years, those that I've seen succeed and realize the vision they had for those companies were those that created that space to which you refer. Now, without exception, all of them intellectually understood the need to do that.
Yeah.
But emotionally, being able to make that transition was beyond many, because there was such an emotional attachment to their baby, their product, however you want to define it. So what did you have to change in yourself or about yourself in order to create that space to which you refer?
I think I still have relapses, and there's still moments where I want to claim my space, and I think that's just going to be a battle. But I think I'm not deeply philosophical about these things, but Zen Buddhism is a philosophy which I found really interesting, and I found it interesting in the way of like that active letting go, letting go isn't a passive thing. And I think just that in itself can help you kind of process and in a way make it happen. Because I think for me, my worry was if I let go, I'm just like passive and I don't do anything. No, it's an act. It's intentional, and it's intentional towards something. Like, where do I need to be for the company? Where does the company need me? Where do the people in the company want me as well, right? And so it's almost like it's kind of those two things that that work. But I do think that the founder is deeply important still in many ways, but not in the way of getting involved everywhere and having a word everywhere, but it's how you set the culture. It's the can-do attitude that you have, the deep belief in where the company can get. And I think those attributes as a founder, you can still also kind of convey them in the company. It's just you need to let people do their job, because most of the time they're much better at it than you are, right? But yeah, it's a constant struggle.
See, you said that healthcare is always on. How does a founder who builds in a world with no finish line protect his own energy and meaning?
Well, I focus a lot on the journey, and I think it can be very daunting, or I think I'd be a very unhappy person if I constantly would be just looking at what I'm trying to chase. Or obviously there's things that we want to achieve and we have big ambitions, but I think a way to keep that sanity and be happy, and it goes back to the gratitude that my parents taught me, is looking at the journey, is enjoying what we're doing. What is success to me? It isn't necessarily doing X in revenue. Of course, it's a company, and we're growing, and I think growing gives you more means to have more impact, and that's why we're doing things. And you have people that you want to pay accordingly, right, and get the right talent. But at the end of the day, what it comes down to enjoying those moments, looking back over the year and the things that you remember when you're older and wiser than we already are. But those moments are so important, that you are in the moment, that you're not consistently just chasing something, because then the lack of finality becomes overwhelming. And I think that's also what creates a lot of burnout in our society. There's this Korean philosopher, was a complicated name, but he wrote a book about the burnout society. And it's fascinating. And it's that constant chase and that definition of us being little corporations that can continuously be a better version of ourselves. To me, that's not life, right? I mean, of course, ambition and making an impact and doing great things is what drives me. But it's also about the moments and the little things in life.
And that you mentioned Buddhism earlier, but have you practices that work for you, that enable you to stay present and continue that grounding?
Yeah, so I mean, I do yoga, do some meditation. I also I've been working with a CEO coach who's amazing, like an amazing person, and I don't think I would be today the type of person I am, the type of leader, without him. Because at the end of the day, leadership is also about like getting to know yourself.
Yeah.
And what are you good at, and where is it that you're just getting in the way because of your insecurities. And I think he taught me a lot about these things. But yeah.
So what is the problem in healthcare you still cannot let go of? The one you feel personally responsible for solving?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're still, we haven't solved it. We're addressing it and we're improving it, but we haven't solved the challenges in healthcare. And that's why I think it's such a fascinating industry. There's so much to be done. One thing is, and it's not technical, it's cultural, and it's bringing a change, is the lack of interoperability, which essentially is a big word for saying systems don't communicate with each other, which is crazy, right? When you think about your data as a patient, it doesn't follow you in a seamless way while you go through the journey. It doesn't follow you to the different points of care. And so it's closed, siloed systems that ultimately are making the journey more difficult and more complex for patients and for doctors. And as a patient, no one wants to go through a healthcare journey, right? I mean, like even the word journey is probably not the right word, but so making it seamless and just basic things like not requiring you as a patient to every different specialist to say what type of condition you have and what is your, just going through the whole story every time and every time. That's painful. That's just reminding also that person about their condition, right? And so there's so much to be done, but I think like really we're at the beginning of that journey. It's just, will it be entirely solved ever? Probably not, but I think we have a long way to go.
Yeah. And this is perhaps my naivety as to the space, but those siloed systems to which you refer, that's not a uniquely UK problem. This is a broader European global issue.
Yeah. And I think, I think the UK is in many ways probably a little bit ahead of other countries. I think like we see it in France. It's a real cultural thing. So absolutely, I mean, there are, and all of these themes are global themes.
Interesting.
I think, by the way, that's why, I mean, obviously we started in the UK. I was living in the UK and now live in Geneva, but I think the UK is a fantastic place to start a business like this, even if it's not in the NHS, because you have the NHS. And there's so much you can learn from how the NHS is doing things, the systems in the NHS. And so I think it's a great place for a health tech company. We talk a lot about the US and things like that. It's great also to remind ourselves like the great stuff that we have in our backyard and an industry that is, in our case, the private sector that is willing to adopt new technologies. And you can see it in the NHS to some extent as well. So there's a lot to be done.
If Semble disappeared tomorrow, what part of your journey would you want your children to remember about how you lived, not just what you built?
I'd say talking about what we did from a culture standpoint at Semble. I think that's... Someone the other day was like telling me, "Oh, you're probably so proud." It was our winter party. There were a lot of people, hundred of us, and like, "You must be so proud. This is what you built." I don't function that way. I was like, we built this together, and I don't say it because yes, I co-founded Semble. Yes, Semble wouldn't exist in its form. There would be another company, but it wouldn't exist in its form if it wasn't for Michael, my co-founder, and I. But then we all got to this place, and I think, but what I'm proud of is the culture that we and I'd probably talk about, and I already do, about the importance of culture, of how you do things as well. Like it's about what you do and also how you do it.
So what next? What does the future look like for you?
Oh, wow. So we still have so much to do, and it's such a normal question that I get as well, because we've been at this now for 7 years. But I think to me, it's continuing to build out Semble. And as long as we have investors who believe in us and customers who believe in us, continuing that journey. So we expand into France. That's a big journey for us. It's from a cultural standpoint also really interesting internationalization, because we are a startup, scale up. I like to call it a startup, but growing outside of your home market is a journey in itself. And look, I mean, if at some point the journey ends, we're better off within a larger company, or I'm no longer the right person, I'll start something new. And maybe one day I'll be an artist. That's what I want to be.
Really? Where does that stem from, that creativity that you touched on right at the beginning? You mentioned numbers were an integral part of or understanding numbers that led you into banking, but you've always had creative, artistic ambition? How does that manifest? Is it drawing, painting, music? What does art mean for you?
Yeah, a bit everything. Yeah, drawing, painting. Although I had to stop. I was taking classes, which was fantastic, and it was in a studio, and it was like, it would be a combination of painting and understanding artists and their painting, but from an art history standpoint, but also from kind of the structure of their painting. So it was fascinating. But yeah, a lot of painting, but I had to let that go because, you only have so much time. But yeah, at some point, painting. Like I love painting. I love drawing. I love painting.
And I'd imagine that ties entirely into your sense of being present.
Yeah.
Because by definition, you are very much in the moment through that creative act.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's a very meditative.
Yeah.
But it's also a journey in a way that what I like about art and reading is that you're on that journey, right? I mean, all the different and music as well, they communicate with each other in a way. And it opens the whole world to you. You end up going to an exhibition and understanding that these paintings are about this book, and you read the book, you would have never read, and then in the book they mention something, and you end up listening to that album because, and I think that's it's about opening. It's about constant curiosity, about opening kind of new horizons. I think entrepreneurship in many ways is the same thing.
So where can people go to find out more about Semble or about indeed yourself?
Well, we have a website, semble.io. We also have a LinkedIn page. We have a LinkedIn page. I'm not the most active on social media, but I'm getting the marketing team is kind of pushing me to do more. And just there's a lot on our website. We try also to showcase case studies and give voice to our customers.
Fantastic. Well, Christophe, thank you for joining me on Extrology. What stays with me is not only your focus on trust as the product, not just the promise, and the way that Semble gives time and headspace back to clinicians so they can live their lives as well as do their work. You mentioned if you want to find out more listeners about Semble, you can find them online at semble.io. But it's been a fascinating conversation this morning, Christophe. I really thank you for your time and your energy and your insight. And there's so much there that really resonates from which listeners can learn. So thank you for sharing your journey with us. It's been a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, Lee.
Grand.
Thanks for having me.
Hey listeners, thank you for your audience and ears. If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, don't forget to leave us a review. It's a great way to help others discover this wonderful community of extraordinary people just like you. You can also find more great content at extrology.com, and of course you can keep up to date with all things Extrology on the socials. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button wherever you listen to your podcast. We look forward to welcoming you back next time. Just a reminder, today's podcast is brought to you by Progresso Talent Partners. Visit www.progressotalent.com today for more information.